Expert Brian Sobel. Brian, the latest polls all have Newsom winning by more than 50%, but just a couple of weeks ago, the race was too close to call. So what happened?
What happened, Frank, is that the spending for the no-on recall really ramped up, and television buys were occurring and are occurring all over the state of California, utilizing people like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and others to state the case for Gavin Newsom. And money talks in politics, and the Newsom campaign may end up spending $70 or $80 million on this campaign to defeat the recall.
Do you think that the recall will humble the governor in any way?
I think anytime a recall is successful in getting to the ballot, it has to give you pause. There's been a lot of charges that this is a Trump-backed recall, that it's a Republican-backed recall. But the fact is, the governor has had a rough year, and with the wildfires, with rising crime, with COVID, with times when he looked like he wanted people to do what he said and not how he was going to act, and so that has fueled a lot of people's anger, and we'll see where this all turns out. But you're right about the polling, Frank. It has now broadened. For a while, it was very, very close. It's now extended.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a landslide. All right, Brian, let's talk now about President Biden. August was definitely his worst month as president. His approval ratings continue to go down. Two-part question here. What does he have to do to right the ship, so to speak? And how could all of this affect the upcoming midterm elections, which are crucial?
The second part of the question is the key one, Frank, how this affects the midterms. In the short term, the curative is time. It just and the hurricane didn't help, and FEMA response and that sort of thing doesn't help. But I think time will be something that is helpful to President Biden. But the midterms is where he may feel the effect, because historically the House or the majority that's in office with the president at the time of the midterms is turned over. And there's some projections here, Frank, that the Dems, if you were looking at polling and other things today, could lose 37 seats, up to 37 seats in the House. That would change the balance of the House. So the midterms are really critical. And again, history is never on the side of the president who's in office and enjoys a majority in the House of Representatives.
And finally, Brian, I'm wondering, does it seem to you like we are seeing and hearing less and less from Kamala Harris? She was pretty much everywhere when the president first took office, but now you barely ever see or hear from her. Am I reading too much into this, or are you noticing the same type of thing?
Oh, I think everybody's noticing it who watches this closely. And this isn't atypical of what happens when a president comes in. The presidential folks that are in the White House have no interest in sharing the limelight with the vice president. This is rather historical. You go back to Harry Truman. Harry Truman was the vice president to Franklin Delano Roosevelt and didn't even know we had an atomic bomb. So, all through the years, vice presidents have been shunted aside to some extent. And so we're seeing this with Kamala Harris as well. I don't see a lot of power sharing, which is what was talked about on the campaign trail. It seems to be now going down a more traditional course where vice presidents are somewhat isolated. Their staffs often don't get along. And that seems to be the case with Kamala Harris at this time.
But, Brian, I would have thought if the conventional wisdom is that Joe Biden would only be a one-term president, that he would want to hopefully set up Kamala Harris to become the next president of the United States. Does it seem to you like perhaps he's lost a little faith in her?
I don't think it's that, Frank. I think it's just more about his plate is very full. There's only so much the White House is willing to turn over to the vice president's office on these very key issues. People don't want to hear, as an example, regarding Afghanistan from Kamala Harris. They want to hear from the President of the United States. And there's time. There's a number of years before the presidency changes again. And, there's this old saying about vice presidents that they are nothing until they are something. And that's where it is with Kamala Harris right now.
Brian, we're going to leave it at that. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Police